Okay, the public hearing scheduled for 6:55 is called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mrs. Houston,
Here.
Mrs. Tackett,
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Here, has proper legal notice been given of this hearing?
Yes. Notice of a public hearing for the purpose of considering the proposed change in zoning for 0.95 acres located at 0 East Street, being parcel numbers 3400700028118023 and 3400700028118020 from M1 General Manufacturing District to M2 Heavy Manufacturing District was published in the Springfield News Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city. Attached hereto is a true and correct copy of the legal notice published on January 3rd, 2025.
I move that the communication be ordered received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
The motion has been made and seconded. Clerk, call the roll. Is there a second? Thank you. Call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Staff report.
Good evening, everyone. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject parcel shown on slide from a general manufacturing use to a heavy manufacturing use for salvage yard use. The subject parcels changed ownership in October 2024. Both parcels are zoned M1, and the use of parcels for salvaging purposes is not permitted under current zoning district. The applicant has stated that the use of parcel is to store vehicles for short term and is an impound lot for Clark County area and for law enforcement towing. The Clark County Comprehensive Plan shows future character area as industrial. The vision for this area is to encourage expansion of light industrial logistics, assembly, and research uses. Presence of such uses as described in proposed M2 district will provide infrastructure including utilities and roads to support industrial activities. The current zoning district M1 does not allow for salvage yard use. The proposed zoning district M2 permits use of property for salvaging purposes under conditional uses. As these parcels are surrounded by heavy commercial and light industrial uses, a heavy manufacturing or industrial land use will be compatible with surrounding areas. East Street is classified as 60-foot wide collector public right-of-way, while East Pleasant Street is classified as local road by Clark County Thoroughfare Plan. Since access to M2 district should be directly from an arterial or collector street and not through a residential district, the parcels are suitable for uses listed under the requested M2 zoning as they front East Street. Any structures proposed or intended to be occupied for any use, signs and fences, will have to be reviewed for compliance with zoning requirements as well as building regulations. Written reports from city staff. City Manager's Office has recommended approval, commenting that required screening shall be enforced. City Code Enforcement Division has recommended approval, commenting that if approved, they will need to apply for a salvage yard license. An inspection was made October 2024 and pictures were taken. This property is currently in violation of Springfield Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1124 and 739.02. City Planning and Zoning Division recommends approval, commenting that the current use of parcels for salvage yard purposes is not permitted under M1 district. Under proposed zoning district M2, salvage yard is a permitted conditional use subject to Board of Zoning Appeals approvals. Any yard area screening and parking requirements will be reviewed during plan review, permitting, and licensing processes. There are no residential districts surrounding these parcels. and proposed rezoning to M2 will complement surrounding areas. It is recommended to follow up with zoning and code compliance divisions for next steps if the rezoning request is approved by City Commission. Overall, staff recommendation is approval of applicant's request to rezone the subject parcels. The applicant's request was recommended approval by City Planning Board as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments from commissioners on the hearing? Dr. Estrop?
Up to tonight's meeting, have you received any additional objections or complaints?
No objections or complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you. The comments from the audience on this hearing only? Hearing none, is there a motion to conclude the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Before we start the formal meeting, we get to honor someone. Could Sarah raise her hand for me, please? Thank you, Sarah. A proclamation for Sarah. I'm going to read that, and then we'd like to invite you up to say a few words, and then we'd like to get a picture with you, okay? So I'm going to read this proclamation for Sarah. Whereas Sarah Crossman has worked at the Springfield Burger King on East Main Street for 23 years, starting at the age of 16, and was recently selected from 7,000 Burger King managers nationwide for the Restaurant Manager of the Year award. Whereas this prestigious award recognizes excellence in leadership, operational success, team culture, and guest experience, all of which Sarah has consistently demonstrated. And whereas under Sarah's leadership, the Springfield Burger King has become a community favorite with a dedicated team that delivers exceptional service. And whereas Sarah's growth from team member to general manager over years of highlights her commitment to personal and professional development, making her a role model for others. Now, therefore, I, Rob Rue, Mayor of the City of Springfield and President of our Commission, do hereby proclaim February 11th, 2025 as Sarah Crossman Day in recognition of her achievement as the Burger King Restaurant Manager of the Year and her outstanding contributions to the community. Sarah, I just want to say thank you for being a strong leader in our community. Thank you for taking the opportunity that you have and being excellent at it. And I honor you with this proclamation. Thank you.
Josh Clifford, I'm the owner of folks in the audience. Sarah, wave your hand. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Good, it's good, it's good.
Folks, if you are here just to see the proclamation, we'll give you a minute. If you want to stay for the meeting, we welcome you. But if you'd like to go ahead and leave, we'll let you take that opportunity. Thanks for coming and supporting Sarah.
I definitely freak out. I don't get to go where it's warm, but I. See, you guys are good.
We don't see any more out.
Okay. The formal meeting of the City Commission's called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mrs. Houston? Here. Mrs. Tackett? Here. Mr. Rue?
Here, please stand for the invocation and the pledge. Father, I just thank you for the chance to be here tonight to help lead the city with our commissioners. I pray that you would give us grace and guidance as we go through this meeting tonight. Thank you that you give us ears. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
A motion to approve minutes from last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. We'll continue in the same format that we've been doing for the commission meeting. We'll begin with commission comments. We trust that you have provided the appropriate ID to our folks in the back to be able to speak tonight, and you have filled out the appropriate cards so we can answer you and the questions that you bring to us tonight. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, and then we'll be followed up with commission comments and answers to the comments, as well as followed up with our staff. Our staff, if they cannot provide an answer tonight, will call you within the next couple of days with an answer, and also post those answers on our website. We'll go ahead and begin with, we have a few cards, so we'll go ahead and begin with Ken Seelig, Barron, 424 South Fountain Avenue.
Thank you very much.
Barron, thank you.
I just wanted to stop down tonight. You have to excuse me. I'm just getting over a terrible, terrible illness, as a lot of people are. I wanted to come down tonight and publicly thank the Springfield Police Department and the Springfield Fire Department and EMTs for the stand-up job that they're doing every time we call them to the warming center. And I assure you, I've had paramedics tell me, well, it's kind of cool because we got them all in one place. They are Johnny on the spot. We had a situation up there the other night that was very, very, very bad. And they responded in record time and took care of business. I just want, in light of everybody whooping on everybody in town, I want to say what a great job those guys do, man. And not one time that we've had them up there has there been anything but gratefulness for what we're doing up there, and I appreciate them. I've been sick. I'm getting ready to do a presentation. We postponed it, but a couple numbers for what we're doing at the warming center, just to kind of a teaser to what's coming here probably in 2 weeks from tonight. 34 people have left that gymnasium up there for drug and alcohol treatment in less than 90 days. That's amazing. 26 people have permanent housing or shelter as a result of the footwork we've done up there. 14 people have accepted Christ, and 0 people have died as a result of exposure in Springfield since we opened that. I'm very proud of that number. 100% of everybody that's come to that door and said they were cold or hungry got warm and fed. We fed thousands of meals, and people talk about Springfield in a bad way. And are there things that are wrong here? Sure. But let me tell you what's right. What's right is the people who have supported my endeavor when the goofy guy with the bib overhauls and the beard said, I'm going to open this up. It's been an adventure. And I promise you, I'm going to sleep from about March 2nd till the 8th when we're done. And I just want to thank everybody that's cooperated and seen that there is a need. We need to sit and have some short-term solutions to the homelessness here, and we need to sit down and have some long-term solutions about what's going on. But the only way we can do that is dialogue.
Yep. I appreciate your heart, Baron. We look forward to a longer explanation of a lot of things we're going to. Thank you. Diane Daniels, 40 Hedgley Road.
Diana Daniels, 40 Hedgley Road. It's refreshing tonight to be able to get inside the doors as a citizen to present my comments and my grievances. If I had shown up last time, I would have been standing out in the cold. As it was, I made the decision to come down here at 5:30 just in case, as a citizen, I would not be able to get inside the doors. You misunderstand why I stand here. I stand here not as myself, but as a representative of all of those who cannot come here, who will not come here, who feel that they have been disenfranchised. I stand here because I care about this city. And one thing you will not know, you must know, I have no fear. I have nothing to lose. Not one darn thing. You can't take my job, I'm retired. You can't take my house, I own it. You can't diss on my kids because I don't have any. And you can't get after my family because they're not here. So I will say the hard things you will need to say and you will listen. There will be some changes here. I am dissatisfied with the direction that this is going. From September, you have not listened to your citizens except for the 3 minutes that we stand up here. My suggestion to you is that you listen to the good, the bad, and the ugly. You get the ugly when you post on YouTube our commission meetings and you allow comments. That's when you're going to get to hear from everyone, not just the ones that are brave enough to come here. You need to understand that it is going to change. You're a public servant. You will do what we tell you, not the other way around. Thank you.
Darlene Yearly, 1204, Peasant Run.
I just got a question tonight. I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people in the community. I'd just like to have some follow-up on the accident where the 8-year-old little boy got hit in the school crossing. The only thing I got was a newspaper that said that the car sped off, the guy got out and ran, and they didn't pursue it because they didn't know who it was. So if you have any information on follow-up, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
We will have an answer for that after comments, for sure. Thank you. Cindy Barton, 2889 Beard Drive.
Good evening. I have a lot of catching up to do since I was blocked out from last meeting. It concerns the budget and the appropriations to where the money is being spent at. I'm seeing all this, going to the roads, going to this development, helping with this, helping with that. But what we're not allocating for is our children. The children are our future. Because of the city of Springfield, we need to update them. We need to make sure that they're taken care of before all these other infrastructures, because you can make these infrastructures all you want to. But if we don't have the citizens here to replace those jobs or to do those jobs like, you want to say that we don't do, we're not going to have a future. City of Springfield is depending on this. The county is depending on it. We need to get our education back in order, teach them the real education, not the cultural beliefs, get back to the situations that are on hand, get our test scores up for the state of Ohio, for the nation. We got to get that in order. We're putting, we got teachers in the school district that it makes up over 67% of funds coming into the district, same as here with the city, that's going towards the payment to these teachers and their pensions, but yet it's our children that are suffering from it. Just like here in Springfield and Clark County, over 63% of the money, of the tax money coming into this city and this county is going towards your all's pensions, and none of you can sit up here and look at us. None of you. Y'all are sitting there looking at your phones. Just on deaf ears, because we're not going with your agenda. 63.4% going to you. We're paying for you all to sit up here and listen, and paying for your pensions. But you don't give us the time of day. You lock us out for your agendas. Now, I'm tired of paying more for your all's employment than I am for everything going to everything else, infrastructure-wise. We need to build it back up, get our kids together, get them straightened out, get this whole influx over with, and put our people back to work. That's what we're paying for you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Wes Babian, 2121 Olympic Street.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the City Commission this evening. I've been thinking about ancient wisdom and some questions. Am I my brother's keeper? And who is my neighbor? And then further, what do we do about that? Those are not easy questions or answers. However, we have seen replies to that question in our own town. The warming center that Barron has initiated, the responses of different groups to issues that we face regarding our immigrant friends, and the many ways our social service and health care providers extend support to all of the community members here. The consideration to our need that law enforcement, city services, and that you as a commission do in the work of civic justice are ways that we attempt together to answer those questions. We are all in this together. In fact, as difficult as it may be for me at times, and believe me, it is, I believe that my neighbors are those with whom I often disagree. Respect for one another's humanity and dignity is a part of being a neighbor to one another. I'm profoundly challenged by the words of a young immigrant who was interviewed recently, and he said, There are some here who hate, but I don't hate them. I love them. I affirm you, Commissioner, for your part in seeking to help create such a space for all of us to be neighbors. Thank you.
James Stewart, 2020 Montgomery Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. I wanted to talk to you about the annual crime report. I know I've been asking for them, and your Public Safety Director, Jason Vai, he said that the city does have them, and they used to be up on the website, and you guys had a change on the website, I guess, with either your contract or what you're doing. And he does have them. He's been trying to get them up. That's what I heard. So that's great. I mean, a little bit of communication, and we got that. I have been coming to this meeting for a while talking about crime stats. So I just want to clarify. I did talk to Chief Elliott, and she said that their department had been producing annual crime reports. And it wasn't up to her to release them. It was up to the city to release them. So evidently, the city has them. I would like an answer, though, from the city manager or the mayor after this, if you will put them up there for the public. I think they're great to have. It's a good metric to have. You can kind of see where you're at, whether you're increasing or decreasing. We can also measure the data against other cities to see if we're comparable, and we can measure it per capita also. So with that being said, the question is, for this meeting, will you try to post at least the last 4 years of annual crime reports for Springfield? And thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Richard Jordan, 2703 Dwight Road.
How you doing? Everybody good? Yeah, I was just thinking about some things that about IQs of animals the other day. I was thinking about my dog, and I looked it up, and he has average dogs have 60 IQs. All right, I think people know where I'm going with this. I looked up monkeys. Monkeys, some of them have 70 to 75 IQs. All right. Some of them have 90 to 95 IQ. Then I looked up the IQ of patients. It matched the dog at 60. So we got a whole bunch of people with a 60 IQ average driving cars around here. You could be collecting a lot of money off these accidents, people running. You're not ticketing any of them. You're losing all kinds of revenue out the yin yang for not ticketing these people. I don't understand why they're not getting ticketed. And when they do go to court, it gets thrown out. That's because of translation problems that you just got 2.5 mil for. And that money went to, I seen videos of them playing video games with the machines, and with Jacob Hayen steering the wheel while he's teaching them. Like, how are they learning like that? That's all bull crap. It's a waste of our money. That money should have went to us for the misery that you've caused. You have caused this whole city. You've failed us on every level, every single level. You've done nothing but demolish it and shit on the citizens, all the citizens. You don't hear our cries. Our cries go in the can of irrelevance and stupidity, and I'm tired of it. It's sickening. It all needs to stop. Investigations need to be underway, and they already are. They have been going on for a couple and a half years. I'm sure you're aware of that. So all your buttholes should be puckering up about right now. If I was you, I'd be tremendously focused on doing the right thing for citizens and not all the Haitians. And I seen you. It's funny that you was wearing one of them crowns because I seen a video of you with the same crown on, and when you click on the video, you were talking about how you are ashamed to be white. You're a disgrace to your own race. What's going on with you?
Hey, you can just stop. You can go ahead and go. Yeah, you can leave, and they're going to escort you out.
Oh, what's the truth? The truth hurting you?
You're
Is the
about
truth
done. You have
scaring
11.
you? All this bullshit needs to stop in here. That's it, man. I'm tired of this.
Okay.
All the citizens are tired of this.
You're finished,
But they're
Joe.
afraid to speak because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs.
Okay.
F all that.
Thank you. Now you can
done.
leave. Now you can leave. Officer, right there, please.
Don't touch me.
Now, everybody has 3 minutes. Sometimes it feels like the commission's being held hostage, but we are listening. We are listening to you. What that gentleman said about IQs is probably the most offensive and racist thing you can bring up. Let that be said. Let that be heard very clearly. That was the most foolish, one of the most foolish things I've heard, and one of the most racist. Racist. Clearly. And he can look on YouTube, and if he comes back, that's fine, but he'll have 3 minutes to do the same thing according to his First Amendment rights. The gentleman that we asked to leave here had to leave because he disrupted the meeting. Nobody was squelching his First Amendment rights whatsoever. Foolish, Jordan. Next. Ma'am, your concerns have, that would be Cindy, Miss Cindy. Your concerns have a lot to do should be aired also at the Board of Education. And I encourage you to go speak to, ma'am, we're not going back and forth. I'm just going to let you, ma'am, please don't say, yeah, okay, you can hear me. The Board of Education, you should go talk to the Board of Education because most of what you talked about was about educational concerns and pay. So I'll say that's one of the answers. Secondly, the pensions and the 63%, I don't know where you were getting the stats, but once again, I make 15 grand. Everybody makes about the same up here, and our pensions are fairly small. So, and that's an annual income up here as your commissioner. So we're hearing you. I know we get accused of not listening. We're listening and writing notes down. So I don't have anything more for you, but the children are a concern. And what we're trying to do as commissioners is make decisions to have a solid infrastructure for the community as our job as commissioner, so the children that are here and the citizens that live here can have a safe environment to be in. That's really our job as commissioners. So I'm just answering what we can, and I know that other commissioners will have comments about different comments. I see your hand, but I'm not done. Thank you so much.
That's quite all right.
Okay. Annual crime reports, I know that we are forthright on that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm sure that can be made known. I've also met with one of the police chiefs in the township, and also I've asked our law director to speak with our city prosecutor to look at some of the crime stats and conviction rates, just to look into that to see how we're doing and where we're at, and she will do that. Okay? I also believe we have an answer for Darlene on the hit and run that was a crime committed by a criminal. Brian, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I'll have Chief Elliott speak to that with even the most recent new information that came today.
I don't have my glasses on here. Good evening, Mayor Rue and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity because today our detectives and our officers, in conjunction with the traffic division, were able to locate the individual and make the arrest. And so the individual was arrested for that incident. Thankfully, that child did not have injuries. Sorry, walked kind of fast here, so just catching my breath. But they did not have, thankfully, any severe injuries, which is something we're grateful for. But that individual involved in that crash was charged with multiple charges: failure to stop after an accident, driving under suspension, with additional charges. That's just a couple of them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank you. And I do want to say I'm extremely grateful because the traffic division worked extremely hard. They were very diligent. Sometimes you don't always get live updates, and there's a reason for that. But we do want to make sure we keep the community informed and let them know when somebody has been picked up on something like that. But it just happened this afternoon that he was picked up.
Good work. Thank you. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Yes, I just also wanted to add to what you said, Mayor Rue. As former superintendent of schools, I can assure you the city of Springfield government has nothing to do with the city schools, public or private. The public schools are operated under the jurisdiction of both the state of Ohio and power given to the local Board of Education. They recently moved their meetings. I believe they now meet in the Dome, but I do not know when or where in the Dome. But if you have concerns about education, they don't belong with us, they belong with the Board of Education. And then, if it's all right, I'd like to...
Let's stick to
that.
other comments for commissioners, and then we'll do this report
That'd be
during the
fine.
forum. Go ahead. Any other comments?
Yes.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Go ahead.
Crystal?
No.
Miss Bart, is it Cindy Barton? Yeah, I just wanted to, I think I wanted to say everyone up here agrees that we need to invest in children in the community. Just as a reminder, in the past year, 2 very sizable investments that we've made as a commission passing through dollars. We contributed $250,000 to the school-based health center with Springfield City Schools so that people could be seen regardless of if they had the ability to pay for health care. And then also, several significant investments into local parks for children as well, including Davie Moore Park.
Thank you. So a simple Google search will show you the board schedule, but let me go ahead and read it off for the Springfield City School Board. You go to Clifton Avenue, which is the south high of the Clifton Avenue entrance. And so you would go in through entrance A on the Clifton Avenue side. Meetings start at 6 p.m. and the next meeting is February 13th. There will be another meeting February 27th, March 13th, April 10th, April 24th, May 8th, and May 22nd. That will take us through the end of this school year. I definitely have to say something as the only Black American sitting here on the city commission. And my kinship through the transatlantic slave trade and my kinship with my Haitian brothers and sisters who are also a product of the transatlantic slave trade, much like myself. And in Black History Month of all times, happy Black History Month, everyone. And as a special education administrator with Springfield City Schools, and I work with our school psychologists constantly as we assess students. And the topic in every meeting that I attend, and if you were to see my schedule at work, you would have your mind blown at the number of meetings I attend where IQ is the topic of discussion. So IQ for me is not some unknown concept. This is something that I work with every single day. So to think that a human being with the development of the human mind, the human brain, physiologically, cannot be compared to that of an animal. And the comparison to people of African descent as less than animals, again, is super racist. I'm going to say that, and I hope to say that so everybody in the back can hear me. So all the things that people come down and bark, I usually let them slide. But again, as our mayor, Rob Rue, has said, and also our assistant mayor, Dr. Dave Estrup, that was one of the most despicable things I've ever heard at having sat in this seat. So I might as well say it now as well. I will not be seeking a second term. So, and these are the things and these are the reasons, because the vileness that has come from citizens, as I've sat here. Yes, it's a good fun joke for you. Thank you. But as I sat here, I just can't continue to consume that. It's disgusting. and then to be constrained on what you can say by this seat, and then to try to attempt to be respectful and be as Christ-like as possible. You know, that's my goal every day. That's my mission, is to be as Christ-like as possible. So having said that, being Christ-like, I've found it very difficult in this role. So I will not be running. Thank you for your thumbs up, Ms. Daniels. I am really excited to see you
Daniel,
back.
Please
So,
say nothing.
Having said that, and I know this might not have been the most appropriate time, but on the heels of that disgusting display of outright blatant racism, and then to be told and gaslit so many times after I sat here, I'm being called a racist myself. By definition, please look it up and understand it. By definition, black people cannot be racist. Prejudiced, yes. Biased, yes. But in this country, the construct of racism does not fit anyone that is of African descent in this country. And as Mr. Young has said, I implore you to do your research, because I've done mine for years. Thank you to my father, George Richard Phillips. So I know my history, and I understand these constructs. And I also understand that racism is a construct that continues to divide us. And it is a product of capitalism, in my opinion. I want to state that again for the people in the back. In my opinion, it's another divider for us as people, for those who do not have, for those of us who are not independently wealthy white men here in America. It's a device that keeps us divided and busy. So if you knew me, you would know that that was my thought. Instead of sitting back and calling me racist, understand who I am as a person. I have absolutely no issue with anyone of any skin color, of any background, of any creed. And if you know me, you know that. As Miss Daniels stands there and nods her head, we're work colleagues, and she knows my character. Yes, I was absolutely concerned with her, about her, when she wasn't here. And when I saw her this evening, I said, welcome back. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We can disagree until the cows come home. But guess what? I still have respect for Miss Daniels. I still care about her well-being. So we need to have a little bit more of that in our city, instead of letting the haves continue to use us as puppets and play around and keep us busy, so we are lost and not understanding what's really going on. I've said it before from this seat. I would implore anyone to look up the Nathaniel Bacon Rebellion. And after that rebellion, you see the construct of racism placed in our country. That was the start of it. Because an African-American man, Native Americans, and indentured servants, white people, all came together to overthrow the planter class. From that moment in our American history, understand this: racism was created to keep us busy. So do your research, for the love of goodness. And again, even a simple Google search of a dog's IQ will show you that 60 is not correct. So again, I'm sorry for being a little emotional, but I needed that time tonight, because I've held it, and I've held it ever since the bus accident. And it's wild. And every threat that I get, understand that it's something, there's a reference to my skin color. Okay? So as a Black American, which is a vastly different experience from a Haitian, let me add that as well, where we would have never been on these grounds or in this country had it not been for the transatlantic slave trade. So I would love for everyone to kind of digest that again. Okay? I'm looking forward to seeing this city move forward. I feel like I'm constrained in this seat for so many things. I have not done the level of community service that I once did from this seat. So I may not be in this seat, but I will continue to serve Springfield in the way that I serve Springfield, which is why I was elected to this seat. So it's not the end of me. I'm a former teacher, now administrator in Springfield City Schools. So the talk about the teachers and the testing, you have no idea. And Ms. Daniels can speak to this. We do everything that we can. In public education, you get who you get, and you do not throw a fit. We teach who comes through our doors. That is our mission, and that is what we come to and we go to school for. We don't get to pick and choose like private entities. We get who we get, and we do not throw a fit. That's a saying that elementary school teachers have all the time. So I thank you guys for giving me this moment to really get this off of my chest, because it has been a heavy, heavy burden to bear. I thank everybody that has supported me, and I really want to Mark Sanders, to Miss Glenda, to Mr. Armstrong. These are people I would have never met had I not been in this position. And we do not agree, but the respect and the support that I have received from those individuals is immense, and we have nothing in common. I've had the privilege to learn so much as a commissioner, and I look forward to whoever can take my seat. Please, is it too late to file petitions? It for sure is. So all those who filed petitions and got your signatures are on the ballot. Good luck. And I hope that you can maintain in this space and do the righteous thing and be as Christ-like as possible in every decision that you make.
Thank you.
Throw me out. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say I know you, I see you, and thank you to Commissioner Brown for all that you do.
We're going to take just 2 minutes, then we're going to come back.
Real quick, Rob, can I answer the crime report?
Yep.
So yes, after the last meeting, Jason Vai's been looking into it. One, I think the report that you found was, I did a Google search, and there's something from the Department of Justice back when they used to host reports that is a 1979, which is why you said the last one that was there. We do all our reporting now through the FBI. In our annual reporting, but we do have those annual reports. They did used to be on our website, and they were linked on there. Don't know what happened with that with the changeover. We're actually doing a RFP right now to get a revamped website because it's very difficult to find information, but we are working to at least get those links restored so that information is out there. So we will share that.
Thank you, Mayor Rue. Law Director Jill Allen and I today participated in a stakeholders update meeting this afternoon concerning the Tremont City Barrel Fill remediation project. And I wanted to share what we learned with my fellow commissioners, city staff, and most importantly, the community. The results of a voluntary monitoring of several wells surrounding the barrel fill showed no change in the results from 2014. We were very concerned that there were problems with the barrel fill, and these results show that nothing has changed since 2014. This is very good news because it shows the contents of the barrel fill have not spread any further than was the case in 2014. This means that our water supply for this city and a good share of Southwest Ohio remains safe. And that the way, and frankly, that's the way we want to keep it. Keep our water supply safe. I want to thank RESA 2, the company doing the design work for the remediation of the site. They agreed to the voluntary testing and are providing us with all the information from all of the tests they ran. I also want to note that the design work for this project is continuing, and given the complexity of this site, this work needs to be done very thoughtfully and carefully in order to keep our water safe now and in the future. So very good news. Our thanks to the US EPA and the Ohio EPA and RESA 2 for working together to keep our water safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I need 2 minutes. We'll continue with the business portion of our meeting. And as we'll do that, we'll go with first readings by title only.
Amending the zoning map of Springfield, Ohio by rezoning 0.95 acres at 0 East Street, Springfield, Ohio, from M1 General Manufacturing District to M2 Heavy Manufacturing District. Confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract with Tony Smith, doing business as Tony Smith Wrecking and Trucking, for the demolition of various parcels throughout the city to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $16,500 for a total amount not to exceed $335,200, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1. Authorizing the purchase of 6 Ford F-150 trucks of the newest model year available from National Auto Fleet Group for an amount not to exceed $358,345.08 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code. Authorizing the city manager to enter into the First Amendment to the State Energy Program Grant Agreement for the Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities Grant through the Ohio Department of Development to modify the reporting requirements, and authorizing the city manager, director of finance, and law director to perform all act and execute all documents considered necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said state energy program grant amendment and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Authorizing the city manager to accept a 2025 Energized Community Grant through the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council in an amount up to $60,694 to be used for implementation of energy savings for energy infrastructure measures. Authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement for the acceptance of said grant, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and the director of finance to do all things necessary for the acceptance of the grant and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Approving general salary increases for non-bargaining unit employees pursuant to Section 175.03C of the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, authorizing the city manager to do all things necessary to implement such increases. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with A&B Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $421,950. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Shelley Materials Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $415,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Highway LLC for an amount not to exceed $78,400. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Valley Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $576,050.
Thank you. Is there any comments from commissioners on first readings only? Dr. Estrop.
On the street material, what's happening with price? For a while there, we were seeing it go through the roof. What's going on now in terms of the price?
Yes, Commissioner. So as you indicated, this is the purchase of asphalt, both hot and cold mix. Really from 2023, prices have remained relatively flat, which is a good thing for that. This gives us 4 different vendors as options to get our materials. Specifically, Highway, HEIWAY, is our cold mix provider, and then Valley is the supplier that we can get asphalt during the winter months because not every asphalt plant stays open year round. I'll just touch on 2. I know there was an article in the paper recently regarding just street improvements and everything, and one of the things I emphasize, we are in pothole season. This constant freeze and thaw that we're experiencing right now, a lot of potholes are going to be coming and popping out. Do not assume just because you've seen that pothole that one of our crews has seen it. So call it in. Let us know. We have great crews that are out there every day working and filling potholes, but make sure to call in. So 937-525 5800. If you call that line, report the pothole, know the street. If there's a cross street that you can give, our crews will get out there and they will fill it. So just wanted to give that little plug.
Thank you. No comments from the audience on first readings only? We'll continue with, if you could,
937-525-5800.
we'll continue with second readings.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Verdantis LLC for environmental consulting services for a period of 1 year with an option to renew for 1 additional year for an amount not to exceed $100,000 for the initial contract year.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
I was just going to ask
Sure.
Brian if you could kind of go over the next three and explain why we're obtaining these services.
Yes. So Commission, the next three items are interrelated as indicated by Commissioner Houston. These are to secure contracts with consultants that do environmental work, specifically Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental assessments of property. One of the programs that the state of Ohio has reinitiated or enacted in the last couple of years is their brownfield remediation program. And so part of that program requires Phase 1 and Phase 2, if required, analysis of the properties and assessments. And so we did an RFQ. We actually had 4 responses. We went with 3. So you'll see 3 different contracts, but we would not exceed that $100,000 total. But this gives us options. So if one has several projects they're working on, we can go to one of the others and have multiple options for that. But again, this is for brownfield remediation, doing the Phase 1 and Phase 2 work, so that we can leverage and bring back those brownfield dollars to our community.
And this is something that we don't have the capability to do.
Yeah, we
Internally,
do not
correct?
have the expertise on staff to perform the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmentals.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience on this? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Manick and Smith Group Incorporated for environmental consulting services for a period of 1 year with an option to renew for 1 additional year for an amount not to exceed $100,000 for the initial contract year.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with MaxSolve Environmental and Safety Consultants for environmental consulting services for a period of 1 year with an option to renew for 1 additional year for an amount not to exceed $100,000 for the initial contract year.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with PAC Power Services Incorporated for the replacement and relocation of utility poles at the Springfield well field for an amount not to exceed $91,165.63.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call. If you could, ma'am, if you could please go to the podium for protocol and let us know your name and address. Thank you so much.
Melissa Rexroth, 1353 Willow Road.
Thank you.
Just wondering, I'm sorry, this is my first time
Yes,
here.
you're fine.
With these bullet points, is this something that you have available before this meeting where we can kind of review it?
The
and-
agendas are on our website, ma'am.
Okay.
And that's okay, springfieldohio.gov.
Okay.
And there should have been copies on the podium.
Yes,
And
I
The
have
full
got that in
detail,
hand? Yeah.
yeah, the full detail is posted the Friday before the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And you can actually go on that web and you can pull out and read all the
Okay,
information
that
with
was
it.
what I needed. Thank you.
And then just point of understanding that this is the second time we've heard it. And so we had discussed it in first readings.
Okay.
It's also been posted for that. So anything that comes up in a second time, we've had a first reading, we have a second reading. You'll see in a little bit, we'll have emergency ordinances. This is the first time we've seen them. They take a 4 out of 5 vote to pass.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
We'll continue. Are we calling for a vote or, okay. So is there any comments, other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving an expenditure of up to $1,008,020 to the Board of Clark County Commissioners to obtain communication and dispatch services for the 2025 calendar year.
Move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I will speak to this first, thank you, and then Dr. Estrop may have. This is a contract that we've gone over, and we were glad to have our sheriff to be able to take over this, and Sheriff Chris Clark, and this is we're looking for good things ahead for our dispatch and to our officers and our firefighter personnel. We have high expectations of the change here, and we know in 1 or 2 meetings I've had with Chris since he's been sheriff that he is set on getting this right. He is. This is one of his priorities as being sheriff, is to make sure the dispatch is the way that he knows it needs to be for our law enforcement and our firefighters. Dr. Estrop?
Thank you, Mayor Rue. I just want to build on what you said. At the Criminal Justice Council meeting, which I attended on behalf of the commission the other day, Sheriff Clark was there and identified one of his sub-sheriff, a major, to in fact supervise the ongoing operation of the dispatch services. So we were very pleased to see that. It is obviously receiving his attention. And of course, he was instrumental in building it. So I think we're looking ahead with some pretty positive feeling.
Absolutely. Other comments from commissioners? So comments from the audience on this?
Mike Lowe. I just want to find out, is the county putting that amount of money in it also?
Just a point of understanding, the county owns dispatch. It is the county dispatch center, and we are clients of the dispatch center, and we are their largest client. And with Sheriff Clark in the control, he's treating us as such to make sure that our safety personnel is getting what they need and are going to get what they need.
So the city's paying the expenses then?
We are basically a client of the dispatch, of the Clark County Combined Dispatch Center. Anything
Yeah,
else,
and I'll
Brian?
just add that, yes, the overall budget for that dispatch center is well over $3 million.
Yeah.
So we're paying $1 million of that. So the county has agreements or contracts with other townships that they dispatch for and other entities, but they're paying the bulk of that total system.
Go ahead, Mike.
Also, since you met with him, has he talked about the overtime that they're paying? Is that going to be addressed this year?
I would encourage you to try to have a conversation or an email
I can do
to
that.
Sheriff Clark, because he is addressing that. So I'll say yes, and he has addressed it 2 meetings that I have heard him speak openly about that, and his concern for the overtime waste. Okay. Is there excuse me, any other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing a 5-year contribution to the Community Improvement Corporation in the amount of $30,000 per year for a total amount not to exceed $150,000 toward the Expand Greater Springfield campaign, which focuses on workforce development and job creation activities in the Springfield community.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. This is a contribution to an organization that is doing a superb job in attracting and attempting to retain new companies to our community. This is a great investment, I believe, that we need to continue to make. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing a contribution to McKinley Hall Incorporated in the amount of $50,000 toward the Enhanced Rapid Access to Addiction Medicine Clinic and recovery housing beds to provide increased access to long-term, stable, and sober housing for those who have engaged in drug treatment programs.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Another excellent contribution we need to continue to be a part of. Other comments from commissioners?
Yes, I just want to say I'm super excited to see this. This is definitely something that will make our community stronger and really look out for those who need us most.
Absolutely. Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Mechanicsburg Sand and Gravel Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $62,325.75.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Mr. Heck, I was wondering if you could comment on this and the next three items on the agenda, please.
Yes, Commissioner. So again, this is the purchase of various sand and gravel materials that we utilize. We put out a bid for 16 different items and received these in. These are used in road projects, utility projects. And so anywhere between 5 and 10% increases is what we've seen from these various purchases. But again, we utilize different vendors so that we make sure that we can get the materials that we need.
Other comments from commissioners?
Excuse me. Thank you.
From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Shelley Materials Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $134,040.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Enon Sand and Gravel LLC for an amount not to exceed $73,201.25.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with A&B Asphalt Corporation for the 2025 paving project for an amount not to exceed $1,741,036.50.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are these roads you can explain where we're going to be paving?
Yeah, I'll actually ask Kurt Tyson, our Assistant Service Director, if he wants to talk to this. This is our Neighborhood Streets Program.
Thank you. This area will be the area west of Burnett, so it's basically from Lexington south to Sheridan Avenue and Burnett Road west to South Belmont.
And this is that entire amount. That's what we're doing this year. Okay. All right, thank you. Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Consenting to the resurfacing of State Route 4 in Clark County with portions located in the city of Springfield by the Ohio Department of Transportation and further identified by PID number 105182, providing for the maintenance of the right-of-way and authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements with the Director of Transportation of the state of Ohio necessary to complete the project.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Brian, could you explain, we have our city streets paving program, and then we have other paving projects that we're not necessarily completely funding, but we need to pass through here. You want to explain a little bit
Yeah,
about that?
specifically on this one, whenever the state is doing a project like on State Route 4, portions of that do touch the city limits, and so they seek consent or authorization to be able to do that work that's in the city. Specifically, this project, Route 4, this extends from the Champaign County line all the way up to Home Road. And so there's portions around Glencoe and that intersection of Home Road and Croft where it touches the city limits. And so we're giving the consent for them to do that work.
Thank you. Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
amending ordinance number 91-90, passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, by amending certain provisions of Chapter 189 entitled Promotional Examinations for Police and Fire Divisions.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. You want to speak to what we're amending here?
Yes, Commission. So specifically, when we worked with our bargaining unit the last time at the table, we wanted to work on the promotional process specifically for our sergeant positions. And so what this does is it has the testing portion, which used to be what it was a written test. And now there will also be a inbox exercise activity where they will come in and do a more facilitated in-person, face-to-face assessment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. We'll continue with emergency ordinances.
Confirming and approving supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Go ahead, Mr. Lowe. Thank you.
Mike Lowe, I would just like to know what appropriations you're talking about and what kind of money we're talking about and all of that.
Certainly, Mr. Lowe. So specifically for these supplemental appropriations, the city receives fire insurance deposits when there has been a fire at a property within the city. And those funds are then released back to the homeowner when the city has ensured that all of the repairs have been made and it passes code. So that is simply a pass-through. We received a larger insurance check towards the end of the year. So we're now appropriating those dollars so that we can pay them back out once we receive that request from the property owner. Additionally, we have our community activities funds, which is where we receive lower dollar donations that are not required to be set up in a specific fund, that we then appropriate for use within those departments. Specifically here, we received a small dollar grant for police, and then there's some additional monies for drug court with municipal court. In the street fund, we are appropriating a little over $540,000. That's carryover monies for vehicles that we were not able to purchase last year. So we're bringing forward those budget monies into 2025 so that we can purchase those vehicles. These items are emergencies. They're on the emergency list so that they immediately go into effect so that we can get those purchase orders in place and utilize those appropriations. But also, just for reference, this list, along with the remainder of the agenda, is available on the city's website the Friday afternoon prior to the commission meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, so the fire that was at the executive inn, how much money was received from that, from the insurance?
The villager?
Yeah, the village.
Yeah, the fire was at the Villager Inn, and I would have to look at specific numbers for you, but just a reminder on that, it was a quarter of one building of three for the fire insurance damage that we received. And then I believe it was a little over $300,000. But also want to highlight that due to the city's relationship with the Ohio Municipal Joint Self-Insurance Pool, that we also received the deductible for that as well. So the city was not out that.
Thank you. And thank you. I know you've reported on that figure in the past too. Sefton, thanks. Other comments from the audience? Other? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving purchases and obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore and declaring an emergency there.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 3 to the contract with Graviton Consulting Services Incorporated to make adjustments to the statement of work for the implementation of the new enterprise resource planning system to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $31,751.48 for a total amount not to exceed $4,009,399.42 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
Good news.
Yes, decrease. From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston. Yes. Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an e-payment services agreement with the Point and Pay LLC for payment card merchant services for a period of 5 years with an option to renew for 2 additional 5-year periods for an amount not to exceed $425,000 for the initial 5-year period, confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from February 1, 2025 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
I do want to ask one question.
Commissioner.
How does this impact our citizen? And in what ways?
Certainly, Commissioner. So this specifically is our merchant services contract, which is how when you make a payment, one bank communicates with our bank for those deposits. This was an emergency in order for us to get the contract in place or keep our go live date with our new utility billing software that goes live on September 1st. We'll start deploying that out to the community, sharing some information for when that goes live in September. Certainly something that we are very excited about as it will interface better with our customers, allows more payment options. But this was a crucial piece in going live with that in September.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good news.
Comments from the audience, ma'am?
Yes, I'm just wondering, is this something that we will have access to, what is being purchased?
Ms.
where this is
Hevston?
going?
So this contract specifically, again, is just for our merchant service provider, which again is just the communication from one bank to another, to our bank, so that we receive payment when they are made. And that is for all the payments that the city would receive. Specifically, SpryPoint is the software that we will be deploying within utility billing. We're currently on that black and green screen legacy system, which makes it, doesn't allow a lot of information for our customers to see. So certainly an expanded service to customers when we roll that out in September. It provides better customer service and better interaction.
Up until this year, we still had Fred Flintstone's computer system in the city hall.
So it's more of a
So we've been
software
doing this
issue,
for,
it's not-
yes,
Okay.
very good. Thank you. Right. Cartoon character, you old, young. Okay. Continue. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to make.
Your name and address,
My
ma'am.
name is
Thank you.
Shayla, 1909 Michigan.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that everyone in the utility billing would be trained appropriately and would know how to use it if someone called, or will there be an IT to help out? Because I know sometimes that we tend to hire people and sometimes they may not get the full training that they need. And so information gets given out incorrect. And I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Certainly, that has been one of the
Thank
challenges with our legacy software, with that black and green screen with training new employees. But as we roll out that system, a robust training system will be implemented with that.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 4 to the contract with Pan Am Technologies Incorporated to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $99,256.39 for a total contract amount not to exceed $782,119.39 for the 5-year term and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the commission. Dr. Estrop?
Now, this is not such good news, but could you explain what it's for, please?
Certainly, Commissioner. So Can-Am Technologies, we often refer to as Teller. That's our one-stop payment solution. So currently, if you go to the city's website to pay a bill, you're going to be directed many different places. This is putting that all with one customer account, one stop, where you can make all of the payments associated with the city.
So this will be a direct benefit to our customers.
Certainly.
Great.
Such good news. You know, as myself, how much I love to pay the water bill. So this is great news. So I'm excited as a citizen.
Certainly. Thank you.
Other comments from the audience?
Yes. What kind of fees would be associated with that? Will there be a payment fee?
At this point, our fees are not changing with the implementation or the passage of these contracts.
Okay, so are there fees now?
Yes.
There currently are fees based on how you would make that payment. But certainly as we move towards going live with SpryPoint in September and integrating all of these systems, something that we will be evaluating, my expectation would be that that would not change much. If anything, there will be more offerings to our residents with reduced costs compared to some of the more antiquated payment methods that we have now.
Okay. Are there any ways to pay without the extra?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can always come into our utility billing department as well. We're open
I'm in
from
the county,
8 to 5.
so I don't really.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Yes, you're
Thanks.
welcome.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 21-351 and ordinance number 22-29, granting authority to First Transit Incorporated for the operation of public transportation services in the city of Springfield, Ohio by amending sections 13E1 and 17A and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. You want to go ahead and highlight what this is?
Yes, Commissioner, so specifically First Transit and TransDev is our current operator of our SCAT system, our Springfield City Area Transit. This is an increase to their management fee and also some changes to the language of the contract as we work to transition our existing operator, First Transit. We are working to move to a microtransit system, which is a more point A to point B service. I describe it as public Uber. And with that, this extends their contract or keeps their contract to July 1, where they cannot leave that contract, keeps their management fee in a place that they aren't losing money, and continues their operations while we make this transition.
And do we have a plan as the city on how this new system is going to be rolled out to the public?
Yes, so we will work directly so that you will see here in the coming meetings the contract with the new operator. And in that contract, there's a piece of their contract that includes marketing, communications on how to roll out this. This will come with a name change. We're looking to update the name of our transportation, our transit system, and so forth. As we change the system, we will also change the name.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. You have a point of order, Dr. Estrop?
No, when we get to that item.
Okay.
Thank
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Authorizing the purchase of a one T86 T4 Bobcat compact track loader with accessories from Bobcat of Dayton for an amount not to exceed $144,458.57 plus trade-in credit of $77,000 for a net purchase amount not to exceed $67,458.57 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
There's some logic and reason behind we're doing this. Mr. Heck, if you would explain to everyone what the thinking is on this.
Yes, so budgeting, we will look to replace this Bobcat or enter this new Bobcat into our fleet because trade-in value is very strong right now. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to trade in existing equipment and get this brand new Bobcat track loader. And so the purchase price that you see of the $144,458, we get a trade-in credit of $77,000 for 2 skid steers and a forestry head that will be turned in, making the total purchase amount of $67,000 for the city. So it makes sense for us with the age of our equipment to replace it with this new track loader. This will be in our sewer division, and probably will look to do this again to maximize in the most efficient and effective way our resources.
Thank you very much.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the amendment of ordinance number 22-39 which authorized the purchase of 7 2022 Ford Police Interceptors from National Auto Fleet Group through Sourcewell to revise the vehicle model year and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
No.
From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
I would like to comment. I know we voted, but you must understand our fleet gets heavy use because the police cruisers are in service virtually 24 hours a day. They don't get rest, so they get a lot of use. I should have said that earlier. My apologies.
Confirming and approving, applying for, accepting, and entering into a cooperative agreement to finance a portion of the city's West Parkwood Avenue and North Yellow Spring Street waterline replacement project with the Ohio Water Development Authority, authorizing the city manager, finance director, and law director to do all things necessary to implement said loan application and cooperative agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
Point of order.
Dr. Estrop?
I believe that there's a typo in this particular item. I believe
It is north.
Is it north? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The next one is,
and it is north as well. My note for you was specifically, I know we've asked before, West Parkwood and South Yellow Springs are in the same general area. These are
Right.
two separate projects, West Parkwood and North Yellow Springs. So the
Okay,
North
so
Yellow
it-
Springs portion is up by the softball diamonds by Wittenberg.
okay, so these are correct as we received them. Okay. Thank
That
you
was
very
very
much.
interesting because I was really focused on where do those two intersect at. So thank you for that clarity.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Kinnison Excavating Incorporated for the West Parkwood and North Yellow Spring Street water line replacement project for an amount not to exceed $229,000 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving, applying for, accepting, and entering into a cooperative agreement to finance a portion of the city's Brook Hollow Drive and Red Bud Lane waterline replacement project with the Ohio Water Development Authority, authorizing the city manager, finance director, and law director to do all things necessary to implement said loan application and cooperative agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Mr. Lowe?
2 weeks ago, you wanted to have that as emergency meeting. Why was that emergency meeting?
The reason why there is a lot of emergency ordinances tonight because we had to change the agenda and move a lot of things into second readings during that meeting.
I understand that, but why was it emergency in the beginning?
Certainly. So the loan application to OWDA was due by February 1st in order to make their February 27th meeting. So that's why that item was an emergency. That's why we're bringing it back this time as a confirm and approve, because OWDA agreed to accept that application without the legislation. they're waiting on that from this meeting tonight in order for that to make their board meeting on February 27th.
And why are you replacing the water lines in that area? Those homes in that area weren't that old. They were built like in the 60s, the late 60s. So is there another thing going on for the development on down at the end of the road? You took the retaining wall out a couple years ago, which have no idea why you took that retaining wall out. So I went to several neighbors on that street and on Redbud. We're not having problems with the water. So why are we replacing the water lines in that neighborhood when there's other parts of this city that is worse condition than that neighborhood? And how long do the pipes last? 100 years? What kind of pipes are in that?
Yeah, I can have Kurt speak to the project, but these are our annual water line replacement projects where we are trying to upgrade and update the pipes to 6-inch pipes.
Yes, Commissioners, Mr. Lowe. This area is one that we've spelled out that it had a major number of water main breaks. This existing line, the years that ductile iron is what's in the ground. The years that was produced, that material has been known to fail over the years. There's no reason other than from the years it was manufactured that either they thinned the walls out too much or things like that. But we keep track of all of our water main breaks all over the city, and this neighborhood is prone to more main break than anything we've got left.
I find that hard to believe. I know that neighborhood. I have lived there for 19 years and have talked to neighbors, and they all say, we don't have no problems with the breaks. We don't have no problems with the pressure. Again, why is that money being spent when there's other areas that I drive through town and I see the city working on these? I honestly think it's because of the development behind the church that you guys
this
set
is
up
not,
for
if,
sale.
Mr. Lowe, if we were doing this because of the development behind the church, we would tell you. Because there's no reason for us to hide that information if we were doing this for something. Now, what you don't want to have, and I think even Dr. Estrop has been working on the Tremont landfill situation with water, you don't want a problem with water. So if the city does nothing and all of a sudden we have a problem with water and the water department says, hey, we told you there was 20 water main breaks over this period of time and you didn't do anything about it, the city's liable for not doing anything, Mike, over this.
Okay,
So this is
you
why.
said that there's been water breaks in that area. I want a list of the water breaks for that time period.
Okay.
Because I honestly, they went and marked the streets a year and a half ago for the water lines. And people would have told me if there's a problem. So I need a list of the water breaks, and I would hope you would put this on hold until this problem is solved. You took the retaining wall down, and it was because of your snow plow that busted 2 blocks. And then what did they do? They come back and they put 3 poles there. The retaining wall was excellent. Now we have thieves from Home Depot and that area coming through the woods after they took that retaining wall down. So I would hope that you would put this on hold until this is agreed upon.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Is there other comments from the audience?
I wanted to add 2 real quick, Commissioner. So these water line projects, one of the things too is we broke these out into 2 separate bids. The engineer's estimate in total for these projects was $1.2 million. Because we broke it out, it came in at around $700,000 combined. So savings by the approach that we did by breaking these out. Again, as my service department staff and folks, they look at this, they look at the data, they see where water main breaks are happening and going on and what needs to be replaced. And so I trust the expertise of my staff in making these decisions and these determinations on what projects to move forward with. These are projects that we've been in design for a period of time. They don't just, so as he noted, they were marked a year and a half ago. That was because we were under design of this project. So it takes time to come to fruition to get to this point of actually awarding a contract. So again, I stand by the expertise of my service department staff and making the decisions and the recommendations on what water lines need to be replaced.
Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Can I ask, is it appropriate to ask a question here? Is there any truth, or do we have any data that supports or goes against what Mr. Mike was just saying? Is there a way that so basically I'm saying, is there a way that we know as commissioners whether or not these issues, what Mr. Mike has just shared with us, has substance in, or could we have I just want to know before I vote to make sure that I'm being respectful to that.
Again,
I'm hoping you're picking
commissioners,
up
we
what I'm
plan
throwing
these
out.
water projects, these
Sure.
water line replacement projects years in advance.
Got it.
Looking at data. And again, so I trust the expertise of my staff in making these determinations, these recommendations on what projects to move forward with and what should be advanced forward. As to a project, there is no plans in place. There is no project that is moving forward at this point on the church property. Yes, there is a developer that was looking at the property on there, but there is nothing that says they were moving forward. The last conversation that was had was that there was no movement.
Okay.
But it could happen.
That was my question.
Could certainly happen, but at this point, there are no plans. This would not be why these would have been replaced, because these were a year and a half ago when we started the design of this.
Before there was even a design. Go
I
ahead,
just
Mr.
want to
Lowe.
make another comment. You want to do Redbud and you Brook Hollow, but why are you only doing half of Redbud?
Because that is the portion that would be needed to be replaced.
Okay, but again, all those houses are being built at the same time in the late 60s, and I honestly do not know of any break lines in that area. Now, over on Northgate, there was a break line this last week that the water ran for 3 weeks, but I'm up and down those streets every day, and I see nothing. So I don't understand why you're only going to do half of Redbud.
Mr. Lowe, could you give us just a few days to get you some detailed information
Yes.
on this? Thank you. That's what we'll do.
Thank you, Brian.
Is that all right? Get him some detailed
Absolutely,
information.
absolutely. So
We're voting. Go ahead.
yes. I just want to make sure that I appreciate you, Mr. Mike. I'm going to vote yes, because we're going to get that information to you, and trusting the things that our staff came out and came back with and the plans that we had in place. But thank you guys for getting him additional data so that he is able to delve through that. Thank you.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Kinnison Excavating Incorporated for the Brook Hollow Drive and Redbud Lane Water Line Replacement Project for an amount not to exceed $462,000 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and the official company for the 2024 Bechtel and Villa Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $11,222.27 for a total contract amount not to exceed $630,972.22, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners?
Yes.
Commissioner?
Brian, would you mind reminding kind of how the structure of, I know this, we have funds that are being contributed towards this that we, correct?
Yeah, this
Bechtel-
is,
Bechtel sidewalk.
not to compute, this project is different from the sidewalk project that is down in the section of the shopping center area.
Okay.
This project is for upcoming road work that's going to happen between the railroad tracks and 41, so kind of in the Kroger shopping center area. So this change order specifically is replacing, there was 55 feet of additional curb that needed to be replaced as part of that project. And then the Villa sidewalk project is another piece of that. That's the section between Durr Road and Middle Urbana, which is also slated to be paved. And so trying to get ahead of that with the concrete work. There is a project that we applied for federal funds to be able to put sidewalk infrastructure on that Bechtel section there. Yes, there is a city share or portion of that. Those grants are typically 80-20, so 20% of the project, but that project funding doesn't become available until I believe state fiscal year 27, which is July 1 of 26.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Mr. Lowe?
Last year, you said that you were going to do Bechtel Avenue, the sidewalks. Now you're saying 2027?
So we accepted the money last year for federal funds to do the Bechtel sidewalks.
Okay.
That money does not become available from the state through the feds until July 1 of 2026, which is state fiscal year 27.
So it seems like we just keep putting it off and putting it off. It's dangerous. Are we talking about from Troy Road all the way down to the Walmart? Or,
I believe it goes to the St. Paris connector.
and it's just on the one side, is that correct?
Yeah. Kurt, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you again. The particular Bechtel Avenue project that you're talking about, Mr. Lowe, it'll pick up where we extended part of the sidewalk to the Myers driveway by Kentucky Fried Chicken on Hillcrest. It'll come down to Bechtel Avenue, wrap up, go all the way up to the Walmart intersection, right there at Speedway. And then it will come back down to the Lowe's intersection on that side. So from Lowe's to the Speedway intersection on the west side of the road, from Hillcrest actually all the way up to Walmart, east side of the road for that project. Just to clarify, the change order that they were talking about is for a different Bechtel Avenue project. This is for the project farther south we're currently doing down in front of Kroger's down to the railroad.
I'm looking forward to that sidewalk in that area for the safety of the people that walk it every day.
That's why we were excited to have this project and the funds to do it. Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and A&B Asphalt Corporation for the Fountain Avenue paving Phase 1B project to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $34,130.28 for a total contract amount not to exceed $2,384,135.52, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the issuance of a purchase order in an amount not to exceed $105,499.35 with the Ohio Edison for the relocation of 28th Street lights on South Fountain Avenue and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved. Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 3 to the contract with RB Jurgens Contractors Incorporated for the CLA Yellow Spring Street Reconstruction Phase 2 project, PID 109607, to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $77,630.91 for a total amount not to exceed $3,992,084.95, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 3 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Just wonder if you might comment on this change order, Mr. Heck.
Yeah, specifically, this is a change order. There's 25 different items amounting in the total of the 77,000. The largest item was 35,000 due to readjustment of the stormwater pipe once you're in the field and actually see the gradient that needs to happen so that water flows. It resulted in the $35,000 change order.
Very good. Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Or call the roll?
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving an easement with Ohio Edison Company upon city-owned property to provide an electrical connection for the new fire station number 5 to be located on North Thompson Avenue and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Creating the Maple Grove Tax Increment Financing Incentive District, declaring improvements to the parcels within each incentive district to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, requiring the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of those service payments, specifying the public infrastructure improvements that benefit or serve parcels in the incentive district, providing for compensation payments and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Why don't we go ahead and hear a report on this, please?
Yeah, so the next two items are related together, and they are related to the Maple Grove single-family residential development. This is the 110 single-unit development across from Walmart on Tuttle Road. This is a TIF increment financing district being set up for public infrastructure improvements that are being made for the development. Again, I want to just shout out to the developer, Clay Chester, Tracy that's here. But they worked with the school district from the very beginning, Clark Shawnee, to work out a school compensation agreement. That school compensation agreement was approved back in December by the schools. So I just commend both parties on working together to come together in terms of moving this project forward while also helping the school district with future growth that they may see from this. So again, this is continued investment and increase in our housing stock, which is much needed in our community.
Excellent. Other comments from the audience? Thank you.
This is, if I'm understanding correctly, giving Che Cluster an exemption or Clay Chester an exemption.
So what it does on a TIF increment financing district is it diverts the property taxes into a TIF fund, a portion of the property taxes, and that helps pay down the investment that is made by the developer for the public infrastructure for road, water, sewer, stormwater, those types of investments to make the development happen. Specifically, for the school district. So this TIF is structured as a 75-25 in the first 10 years. So in the first 10 years of this TIF, 75% of the increased valuation would go to the TIF fund that would have gone to the schools, and 25% will go to the schools. After year 10, the schools are made whole, and then the remainder of the TIF is non-school revenue that would go in and again pay off any bonds or debt related to the infrastructure that's installed as part of the project.
Okay, so it's for 10 years.
It's for a total of 30 years, but the school piece, the schools are made whole after year 10.
Okay.
And that is how the state of Ohio has set up TIF districts or TIF increment financing in the state of Ohio. Is the maximum period that it can impact the schools before they made whole is that 10-year period, unless the schools agreed and said 30 years, but that doesn't happen.
Okay, so it does exempt the owner, which is Clay Chester.
Doesn't exempt the owner. They still pay the property taxes. The
For the
property
school,
taxes goes to a TIF fund.
Right.
So it doesn't exempt them. It
Okay.
just goes into a fund that pays off public infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
Other comments from the audience? Go ahead, please. Go ahead and state your name for us, please.
Tracy Craig, 4991 Stony Creek Road.
Thank you.
I am just here because I wanted to just take a few minutes to say thank you. I am the project manager with Premier Property Sales. We are thrilled to bring this project to life, and it truly is not possible without the collaboration and partnership of everyone involved in getting the TIF approved. We would like to highlight all of the efforts from the Shawnee Clark School Board and the City of Springfield and our commissioners. We are grateful for your support, and we can't wait to see the positive impact that this subdivision will bring to our community. We look forward to continuing our work together and achieving the great things that this project will bring. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note that this particular developer is not only developing, a subdivision like what you're getting ready to do, but also has looked for infill project opportunities within the city. There's one on Home Road near Ronez. There is one on one or two other
Hillside,
Hillside.
McCray.
These are areas that had schools that were cleared. So we appreciate your creativity in looking for this comprehensive opportunity that you've taken to help develop the much needed housing in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Approving and authorizing the execution of an infrastructure agreement for the development and financing of public improvements for the Maple Grove Housing Project and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Are there other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Approving and authorizing the execution of an infrastructure agreement for the development and financing of public improvements for the Sycamore Ridge Housing Project and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
I wonder again if you could comment on this, Mr. Heck.
Yes, this is specifically for the Sycamore Ridge housing development. This is at the corner of Burnett and Leffel, and it's a 220 single-family unit development that will be built out in phases. This is the infrastructure agreement, so when plats move forward, we typically have a plat agreement, but with TIF financing, we do an infrastructure agreement. As you see, we do not have the TIF legislation on tonight. There was a previous TIF for Sycamore Ridge that was approved several years ago. The project stalled out. And so the developer, again, commend the developer and the school district coming together and working out a school compensation agreement that was also approved at that December 18th school board meeting that helps the school, again, with that upfront infrastructure cost that they may have as they prepare for new students coming to this development. So very similar deal. Theirs is actually 65-35 in the first 10 years. So 65 to the TIF fund, 35 to the school district. And then again, a school compensation piece to help with some of that upfront infrastructure costs that the schools may see. So we hope to have that brought to you, the actual TIF legislation at a future meeting because we will amend that agreement that was in place a couple years ago.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Copray America Corporation and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. If we could get somebody to speak to this.
Yes, I'll actually have Tom Franzen, our Assistant City Manager, Director of Economic Development, talk about the next two items as they are interrelated.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. So this is Enterprise Zone Tax Abatement Agreement with Topre America, which we're all familiar with. But this is a continuation of the growth that they have seen. And this is related to a 176,000 square foot expansion of their facility to accommodate some hot stamping operations, which is really more of a high-tech operation. They're an automotive supplier to Honda, and Toyota, and others. But this is a 15-year, 100% tax abatement. This has also been approved by the city school district prior to our meeting, and they have passed a resolution of support for the project. This would create 157 new jobs and about $6.9 million in new payroll. And that's on top of their existing about 1,100 jobs and about $36 million in payroll. So very successful company, very successful partnership that we have here with the community. We thank Topre for their continued investment. And in addition to that, so the follow-on item that's coming next is a revenue sharing agreement with the city of Springfield, with the Springfield City Schools. And so that's sharing some of the new net income tax that's created from this project with the school district to help offset that loss that they're going to see from the tax rate. Yes, sir.
You want to speak to what this project was introduced at as far as income and jobs to what it is now? Its initial, like when Topre was coming to Springfield.
Sure,
you want to
tell the
speak-
whole story.
Yeah, I mean, just, well, where we
go
are
way
now
back.
from where they said they would be.
Well, so Topre came to the community. Initial project was a 20,000 square foot plant.
Right.
To meet some requirements from Honda. So they've grew very rapidly. Began the second and third phase really before they finished the first, and really have continued building kind of nonstop to keep up with that expansion opportunity. So what started as a 20,000 square foot operation really is about 450,000 square feet today, and stands, if for those that don't know, in the former International Harvester site over off Lagunda Avenue. So great kind of rebirth of that area and of the manufacturing legacy that had been there for 100 years. And I probably should take note just to say, lots of economic development partners bringing this to fruition in our community, the Greater Springfield Partnership playing a really large role in bringing them here and working with them to kind of get them to this growth where they are today.
Absolutely. So the original job estimate was it 400? Am I right about that?
The original job
Like-
estimate was 15 to 20 employees, and then
Okay.
they went to 300.
Much greater than I thought.
600,
Okay.
and
That's what I want to
1,000.
say. Like, so they're at over 1,000 employees projected compared to where they started.
Yeah, absolutely. They have
Great.
more than doubled what they had projected in job growth.
Thank you.
And total investment there is going to be about $350 million.
Just worth repeating some successes. Thank you. Other comments from the audience?
How does that relate to the city schools? I'm not,
It's a tax sharing effort. Go ahead, Tom, if you want to speak to it.
So Ohio Revised Code, when we enter into an enterprise zone tax abatement agreement, if there's more than $1 million in net new payroll as a result of the project, the city must share income tax with the school district. They can negotiate something outside of that. And in this case, the city's actually sharing 90% of the net new income tax generated as a result of the project. Yep.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an enterprise zone revenue sharing agreement with the Springfield City School District Board of Education and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the federal equitable sharing agreement and certification with the United States Government, Department of Justice, and Department of Treasury for the period January 1, 2025 through December 31, 2025, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Are there any other new items on the agenda? No. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there other announcements from commissioners?
I do have one announcement
Thank
very
you.
quickly. There will be a Black History program on February 22nd at 5 p.m. It will be held at the Hollenbeck Center. That's 275 South Limestone, Springfield, Ohio. And this event is being sponsored by the Springfield section of the National Council of Negro Women. So if you would like to purchase a ticket, you can purchase those tickets at Young Hair or from any member of NCNW that you may know in your community.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes, thank you for coming.